How are you feeling today? Have you ever stayed until the very end of a party? The music has stopped. The faint yellow light lingers, shining over empty pizza boxes, warm beer glasses, and scattered chairs. Around you, there's only the heavy air of what once was. Everyone has left in pairs, in groups, some holding hands, some leaning on each other, and you just stand there with a can of beer that's no longer cold, and an unnamed emptiness pressing in your chest. No one said goodbye. No one asked you to stay. Yet somehow, you remain, as if something unsaid, something unresolved, something unlet go still lingers in the air. And strangely, that feeling of being left behind in a place that was once loud, once full of laughter, is exactly the feeling many men live with every day inside their own relationships. She still sits right beside him, still asks about his day, still says, "I love you" in her daily texts, but somewhere, deep inside, he knows he's already been left behind, not by words, but by the invisible absence of connection. He laughs, she laughs, but between their smiles lies a distance no one dares to touch. He wants to ask, "Where did we go?" But he doesn't, because he's afraid. Afraid that if he says it out loud, that emptiness will truly crack open. And so he goes silent. He begins to walk alone inside his own relationship, still there, yet unseen. Like the last person left after a party, sitting in a messy room, looking around and realizing, turns out, I've been left behind for a long time. That feeling, the loneliness that exists even when someone's still beside you, is the beginning of every quiet collapse in love. No noise, no tears, just a soul slowly drifting away from a body it no longer belongs to. When a man enters love, he often brings with him the best parts of himself, his confidence, his pride, a soul still whole, and that quiet inner knowing of who I am. At first, that's exactly what she falls in love with. His decisive eyes, his steady voice, the way he doesn't need to prove anything to be loved. She feels safe in that steadiness, as if she could lean on a rock without fear of falling. But no one notices when things begin to shift. A soft comment, "You should text me more often." A small frown when he laughs a little too long with a female friend. A sigh when he chooses to spend time on his hobbies instead of with her. Nothing serious, just little things. But those little things, when repeated often enough, become a new program installed into his mind. From a free man, he begins to learn how to self-adjust. Before speaking, he thinks, will this upset her? Before acting, he asks himself, will this make her angry? And gradually, he stops living as himself. He starts living as the version of him she will approve of. 6 months later, he starts asking for permission to see his friends. A year later, he apologizes for raising his voice a little too much during an argument. 2 years. He no longer remembers who he used to be. He thinks gentleness is love. Submission is respect. Silence is understanding. But in truth, he's only being trained to obey. Love, when mixed with the fear of losing it, turns into a very gentle anesthetic. He doesn't realize he's slowly going numb. He only feels that he's becoming easier, more agreeable, and less argumentative. And at some point, he looks into the mirror and sees a familiar yet distant face. The light of a man who once knew what he wanted is gone. All that remains are tired eyes trying to survive on someone else's approval. The most painful part is not that she changed him. It's that he allowed himself to be reprogrammed without even knowing it. And he calls it love. At first, he thought he was protecting love. He tried harder, yielded more, and became gentler, believing that was what a good man should do. He thought apologies could preserve peace. thought that if he were patient enough, she would love him more, but he didn't know that every time he bowed his head, every time he let himself lose in silence, something in her eyes died a little. She no longer looked at him the way she once did. No more admiration in her gaze, no more respect, only a cold look, like someone staring at a wall that was once strong but is now cracked. He thought she was testing him, but in truth, she was measuring his limits. Each time she spoke harshly, he stayed silent. Each time she pushed away, he followed. Each time she threatened to leave, he begged her to stay. She realized she could control his reactions, and from that moment, love stopped being love. It became a game of power. She no longer needed his affection. She needed the feeling of winning in the relationship. And he, without realizing it, had given her that power through his fear of losing her. She grew used to controlling. He grew used to being controlled. And like every rule of the game, the winner grows bored of winning, while the loser grows exhausted from losing. He didn't know he had entered a toxic loop, where he thought he was preserving love, but was actually feeding a quiet contempt. She said she loved him, but deep down, she no longer respected him. And he, the more he loved, the more he lost himself. Between them, love was no longer a bridge. It had become a chain, one pulling, one yielding, one commanding, one obeying. Love was once a place where both were free. Now it had turned into a battlefield of control, where people no longer ask, "Are you happy?" but "Who's winning?" He thought he was in love, but in truth, he was merely living in fear, a fear disguised as love. When a woman feels she can control every reaction of a man, something subtle begins to happen. She starts to wear a crown, not through actions, but through her eyes. The eyes that once sought protection now turn cold and superior. The voice that once was gentle now carries command. And every small gesture of hers carries a silent message. You are no longer the man I once respected. That crown isn't made of gold. It's made of the power he has given away piece by piece. Every time he stays silent when he should speak, every time he apologizes when he's done nothing wrong, every time he endures instead of setting boundaries, a new jewel is added to her crown, and he, without realizing it, loses a part of his identity each time she wears it, until one day, he realizes he's no longer the man in his own relationship. He's become the caretaker of her emotions, the one responsible for making her happy, the one who carries her sadness, the one who apologizes even when he's the one who's been hurt. She starts looking through him, as if through an object in her house. No longer the gaze of love, just the gaze of familiarity stripped of value. He's still there, caring, listening, doing everything she asks, but in her eyes, he has turned into furniture. Something that exists, serves a purpose, but no longer has a soul. And day by day, her crown grows heavier, not from true power, but from the emptiness that power creates. And he, the man who was once the mountain she admired, is now just a shadow bowing before the throne she built for herself. In that game, no one is happy. She's tired of ruling. He's tired of serving, but neither dares to stop, because both fear facing the only question that truly matters. Is this still love, or just a long performance between two people who no longer believe in the script? There is a strange phenomenon in the female psyche that most men never understand. She keeps testing him not because she wants to hurt him, but because, deep down, she needs to know whether he's strong enough for her to trust. When she asks, "Do you remember what day it is today?" When she suddenly turns cold, when she pretends to be upset over something trivial, it's not just emotional inconsistency. It's the unconscious test of survival instinct. Each time she tests him, She doesn't want an apology. She just wants to see that he stands firm. She needs to know that in the storm of her emotions, he remains the anchor, unmoved, unwavering. But most men never realize this. They think every time she gets angry, it's a battle to be won, or a crisis that needs to be soothed. So they bend themselves, apologize even when they did nothing wrong, try to make her happy, lower themselves to save the atmosphere. They think they're protecting the relationship, but in truth, they're slowly eroding their own allure. Every time he yields, every time he fears losing her, every time he fails that invisible test, she doesn't feel happier. She just loses a little more trust. That is the paradox of testing. Women test to find strength, but by testing too much, they end up weakening the man over time, like drops of water falling endlessly on a stone. At first, it's just a faint dripping sound, but over the years, the stone wears down. So does a man's spine. He begins to fear anger, fear silence, fear her gaze, fear losing the last fragments of love that remain. And within that fear, he slowly loses his instinct to lead, until one day she no longer sees the man she once loved. All that's left is a gentle, weary, obedient figure. She hates that, but ironically, she created it herself. She tested him to find a man who stands strong, but because he feared losing, he made himself collapse, and so both lose. He loses his strength, she loses her respect, and love, once a sanctuary for two free souls, turns into a laboratory of unconscious experiments where both slowly burn out without ever understanding why. There comes a point in every relationship when a man realizes no amount of gentleness, no apology, no endurance can save what's already dying, because the more he tries to make her happy, the farther she drifts away. And strangely, not because he isn't good enough, but because he isn't real enough. Sometimes, what needs to be said isn't comfort, but the truth, the kind she doesn't want to hear, yet needs to. And that is the weapon not to wound, but to break the illusion both have been trapped in for far too long. The first weapon, you're just ordinary, not an insult, just a truth spoken calmly. At first, I thought you were different, but then I realized you have fears, games, and reactions just like everyone else. She forces a smile, then goes quiet, because deep down, that's her greatest fear, to no longer be special. Since childhood, every girl has been taught that she's the exception, the one and only. When he says that's no longer true, he's not attacking her, he's removing the mask of illusion. The second weapon, indifference to her leaving. She threatens, I'll go. He simply smiles. If that's what you want, then go. No anger, no pleading, no explanations. Just a man standing calmly in front of loss. And in that instant, every ounce of power she once held dissolves, because her entire game only works if he fears losing her. When he no longer fears, the chessboard collapses. She expects him to chase after her, but he just sits there, peaceful, pouring himself another glass of wine. And for the first time, she truly panics. Not because he's leaving, but because he's awakened. The third weapon, touching the deepest layer of ego sexuality, every woman believes her allure is her ultimate weapon, the thing that makes her irreplaceable. But one day, if he says still calmly, honestly, our physical connection is ordinary. I've had deeper ones before, but that's okay. No one's perfect. No raised voice, no cold tone, just like someone talking about the weather. In that moment, she can't react because, for a second, her final weapon has been disarmed. What she believed was her superpower suddenly becomes a trivial card in her hand. And the most striking thing is, he didn't insult her. He only told the truth, a truth she never had the courage to face. These words, they sound cruel, but in truth, they are antibiotics for a poisoned relationship. No one swallows medicine without bitterness. But if you don't, the infection spreads until nothing can be saved. They are not acts of aggression, but the final boundary of self-respect. Because real love cannot survive in an atmosphere of fear. It can only exist when both are strong enough to hear the truth and still stay. In the silent battlefield of emotions, sometimes the truth is the only bullet strong enough to pierce through the pretending. And when he dares to speak it, not to hurt her, but to awaken them both, it ceases to be a weapon. It becomes the declaration of a man who has learned how to love without bowing his head. After all the conflicts, the tests, and the power games that seem deliberate, many men choose to leave in anger. But if they paused just for a moment to look deeper into what's really happening, they would see something strange. Behind all those tests, it isn't malice, it's fear. Women don't control because they want to dominate. They control because they're afraid of disappearing, afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being replaced, afraid of no longer being loved. She tests him, not to tear him down, but to see if he's strong enough for her to trust and finally let go. In her unconscious, she's speaking the language of instinct. Show me that you're stronger than my storms. Don't fear them, don't fear me. Every time she snaps, complains, or becomes distant, what she's really asking silently is, are you still here? Because for her, love isn't measured by promises, but by a man's capacity for endurance and emotional stability. Science has confirmed this. In a study conducted in Stockholm, psychologists observed couples during arguments. The results were surprising. Women whose partners stayed calm during conflict showed a faster drop in stress hormones than those whose partners tried to comfort or appease them. What does that mean? Her body biologically responds to his steadiness. When he doesn't react, she feels safe. When he remains grounded, she lowers her armor. He doesn't need to win against her. He only needs not to be pulled into her storm. Because in truth, she doesn't want to be strong. She only becomes strong when she can't find someone steady enough for her to be soft. She wears the armor of control only because she's trembling inside. And the paradox is, the stronger she appears on the outside, the more fragile she is within. The more she tries to control, the more she longs to surrender. The more she tests, the more she hopes for someone strong enough to make her stop testing. She doesn't need a man who conquers her. She needs a man who conquers himself. Someone who can look at her anger, her tears, and see behind them a child terrified of being abandoned. When he understands that, every battle turns quiet because he no longer needs to win, he just needs to understand. And that's when love begins to return, not in the form of power, but in the form of safety. At some point, after all the tests, the threats, and the long silences, a man wakes up one morning and realizes he's no longer afraid. Not afraid of losing her. Not afraid of being misunderstood. Not afraid of her coldness, her anger, or even of being forgotten. Just a strange sense of peace washing over him, and in that very moment, he regains his freedom. Freedom doesn't come when he leaves her. It comes when he stops depending on her to define his worth. He begins to live again, like he once did, listening to the songs he used to love, meeting the friends he had drifted away from, doing the things that make his heart tremble, for himself, not for anyone else. She thinks he'll collapse. She thinks he'll come back, begging, proving himself, because in her game, she believes she's the sun and he's merely the planet orbiting around her. But this time, he doesn't run, doesn't cling, and doesn't say a word. He simply walks away calmly, and when the light returns to his eyes, the light of a man no longer afraid to lose, she begins to panic, not because he's leaving, but because the power in her hands is melting away. She tries to text. He replies shortly. She stirs up drama. He just smiles. She flaunts something new. He congratulates her. No coldness, no bitterness, just a peace so deep it makes her lose control. Because her power never came from how much he loved her, but from how much he feared her. Now that fear is gone, and with it, everything she once held. She thought he would break when she left, but she never expected that the moment she disappeared would be the moment he truly came alive again. He returns to the dreams he once abandoned, to the work that once made him proud, to the small joys he once gave up out of fear of making her upset. He doesn't post pictures to prove he's fine. He doesn't laugh loudly to look strong. He simply exists quietly, peacefully, and that serenity unsettles her more than any anger ever could, because for the first time, she realizes he no longer belongs to her game. He has withdrawn his soul from the battlefield. He hasn't won, nor has he lost. He's simply stopped playing. People often think awakening is a bright, explosive moment, but in truth, it happens in silence. Like when he sits alone at night, watching the light shimmer through his glass of wine, and smiles because he finally understands. She was never the light. She was just the cloud that covered my own. And when he realizes that, he no longer needs to hate, nor to return, because hatred is still a form of attachment. And now, he's truly free, not because he won, but because he no longer needs to prove anything. When a man truly moves past the fear of loss, he doesn't become cold, nor does he become bitter. He simply becomes honest, no longer forcing himself to appear strong, no longer staying silent just to keep the peace, no longer saying what's pleasant to hear to avoid conflict. He speaks the truth not to win, but because it's time for all pretending to end. Once, he thought kindness meant always being gentle, but now he understands. Honesty is also a form of kindness, only sharper, straighter, and sometimes it hurts to hear. When he says, "I'm tired," it's because he truly is. When he says, "I'm not happy," it's because he no longer wants to pretend. It's not that he wants to hurt her. It's because he knows prolonged silence is what slowly kills them both. His honesty no longer comes from anger, but from stillness, a kind of stillness that only arises after walking through enough pain to realize the truth, however raw, is lighter than the weight of pretending. He doesn't need to speak loudly, just clearly. Doesn't need to insist he's right, only needs to dare to say, "This is how I feel." People often think honesty is the blade that makes love bleed, but in truth, it's pretense that acts as the poison, killing it slowly. Love is not afraid of truthful conversations. Love only fears those who don't dare to speak. When he says she's not special, he isn't insulting her. He's simply reminding her that being special doesn't come from being worshipped, but from having the courage to look within. When he says he's not afraid to lose her, he isn't being careless. He's simply acknowledging a simple truth. Anything that causes him pain is not something he'll keep holding on to. When he says he's happier alone, he isn't boasting. He's simply being honest about the life that finally feels real to him. She might get angry. She might feel hurt. But deep down, she knows this is the first time he's truly himself. because every woman, no matter how strong, longs to be beside a man who's honest enough not to pretend, a man who isn't perfect, but real, who doesn't pander, but can be trusted. And when he returns to that honesty, love, if it still exists, will be reborn. And if it doesn't, he will still be at peace, because he's saved the most precious thing of all, his own essence. That's when he finally understands. Strength is not control. It's the ability to face the truth without disguise. No anger needed. No proof required. Just presence genuine and whole. And within that truth, he finds what false love could never give: freedom. At a certain point, after all the struggles, the harsh words, the leaving, and the returning, both of them suddenly fall silent. Not the silence of resentment, but the silence of exhaustion and of realization. She sits there, looking at him, no longer wanting to prove anything, no longer needing to win, and he no longer wanting to explain or defend. Two people who once drew each other like magnets through passion, now simply sit side by side in peace, like two souls who have finally stopped trying to control. The crown on her head, the thing that once made her feel powerful, exceptional, that once made her hold her chin high in every argument, suddenly feels heavy because she now understands. Power without love, victory without respect, is nothing more than loneliness coated in gold. And he, the man who once bowed before that crown, now simply smiles. No resentment, no bitterness, just the smile of someone who has walked through the storm and understands that no one truly wins. In a relationship built on fear, the crown doesn't fall, it dissolves in her final gaze when she realizes the man before her is no longer the one who lost, but someone who has learned how to be free without having to walk away. He's still there, but he no longer belongs to her. He still speaks, but no longer needs validation. He still listens, but no longer fears silence. He is present not to keep her, but to keep the stillness within himself. And she suddenly understands the greatest fear of a woman was never that he will leave me, but that he will stay and no longer need me. When a man stops reacting, when he looks at her with quiet eyes free of resentment, all the power in her hands disappears. Because power only exists where there is fear. And that is when love finally has a chance to live again. No one stands above the other. No one wins. No one loses. Only two people, unmasked, weary of the games, finally seeing each other truly. When the crown disappears, there is no queen and no servant, no tug of war, no punishment. Only two bare souls remain. One who once wanted to be loved so much she tried to control, and one who once feared losing so much he lost himself. And now, in that weightless space between them, they both understand. Love never requires anyone to bow. It only asks that two people lift their heads, look straight at each other and not be afraid. He doesn't win, because in love, victory is an empty concept, but he awakens. And sometimes awakening is the greatest reward. She doesn't lose, because no one loses when they finally learn to love without control. She simply lets go. And sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. And so the story closes, not with a happy ending, nor with separation, but with the quiet peace of two people who no longer need to win. Because love, once it has passed through every game, has only one shape left: peace. He has returned to himself. So has she. And the crown, the thing that once divided them into opposing halves, is now only a memory. No one wears it anymore. No one needs to. Because in the end, Two grown souls don't need power to love, only truth. And that's the content of this episode. If you feel a sense of resonance with these reflections, don't forget to follow the channel and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. See you soon. Bye.